Hi, welcome back or welcome to my channel. If you're new, my name is Laura. Hi, hello, welcome. Today is day 5 in single week. First of all, I am posting every day this week, which is not the norm. Second, all of the videos this week are single shadow centered. So all things single shadowed, yet looking at this angle, it looks like we're talking all things eyeshadows. I was inspired by Tuesday's video where I talked about single brands that I wanted to try. Within that video, there was a little palette honorable mention that I talked about. Anyway, I figured that today I wanted to do a build your own palette, but I wanted to dupe out the Tiny Marvels palette using my singles, which are in these two large storage palettes right here, as well as the rest of my palettes that have magnetic shades that can come out of the palette. Ripley decided he wanted to sit on my desk for a while though. Anyway, not why we're here. We're here to dupe the Tiny Marvels palette. I probably won't do any looks or anything with this, but it's more of an exercise of trying to talk myself out of purchasing. But I'm really trying to curb my spending, especially when it comes to eyeshadow, because I have no business buying more eyeshadow. I have so many eyeshadows in my collection. We're gonna go shade by shade and figure out what is going to work best in this little dupe the vibes, dupe the palette. Yikes. So the first shade in the palette is just an inner corner white eyeshadow. Also, if you missed this, I did film my BYOP, but I did switch some shades out. So this is what my BYOP is looking like after my Pan Those Eyeshadows update. I won't put which shades swapped out, but if you know, you know. But I'm thinking for the inner corner shade Web from the Tiny Marvels palette, I'm thinking either this shade here, which is, yeah, actually that's pretty spot on, I think, of what Web should be. It looks like a white with a little bit of a gold reflect, or like a little bit of a gold shift to it. I'm going to go ahead and put this shade here. This is actually a depotted and repanned shade. I know that that is technically a discontinued shade. There are so many other shades like this in my collection that are not in single form. So I have the Going Coconuts palette here. I have this shade here, Palm Reader, which is another white gold kind of shade. I have the Bare Necessities palette here, which has that shade, which is just, again, a nice bright inner corner shade. It's really just a bright, super exciting inner corner shade. Moving on from Web is Tree Hopper. It looks like a pretty doggone neutral toned brown matte. Now, these two shades in my BYOP are similar. However, this is, I think, just a little too cool toned to really dupe that shade Tree. This shade here, I feel like, is definitely too warm toned. Maybe something like this. No, it's way too orange. I feel like I don't have a whole heck of a lot of neutrals. I do think this would get me by, but it's not quite the right tone. Yeah, way too dark for that. I feel like this one. Or this one. I think this guy is going to be it. This is the shade Sand from the Gold. Sandstone, I'm sorry, from the Natasha Denona Gold palette. I'm sure you have 1,000 of these in your collection. I think that looks pretty good. Fire Butts is one where I don't think I'm going to have something exactly like it in my collection, but I'm sure I am sure I have similar shades to it because that seems like a color that's so in my like color range that I love. It's like a super soft, maybe this actually. I'm thinking, I can't really see it. I think that's going to be the single that's going to work the best. So I was thinking chandelier might be another. I think that is so pretty, but I think that might be like too much. So I think for, this guy though. No, these are like two-dimensional. I feel like this shade by Kristen Lee Cosmetics is going to be the most similar to it. This is the shade, what are you, Mother Nature from the Spring Fever collection. Thinking that's pretty close to Fire Butts. So that's what we got going on now. I had to change out my battery, so I went ahead and actually looked at the next shade and kind of went through my palettes that are on my desk and figured out shades that would be similar. I have this Ninhydrin palette by Adept Cosmetics here, and I thought the shade ACM 32, this guy here, it has a little bit of a green tinge to it, and the shade Walk-In Stick has a bit of a green tinge to it also, so I thought maybe something like this. Actually, that looks pretty good for that shade, actually. That is that guy. It's murky, but still is definitely like more of a brown. It's definitely an olive, but it has like that brown note to it, so I thought that might be a good one. I also have the Rogue palette, and I believe this comes in singles as well, and I thought maybe this shade here, Stealth, I thought maybe that guy, which is definitely two green tones. I just don't have anything with this kind of undertone where it's kind of olivey, kind of khaki-y with brown. I don't have anything in my singles with that, so I think the best one we have is ACM 32. That's pretty unique shade. I didn't realize Adept labeled their shades, at least on some of them. I don't know if it's all of them. This would be a cute little quad in my opinion. Maybe instead of like this shade, just have that maybe a touch lighter and then having a darker like Calthea from the Yucca palette might look really gorgeous in there. If you can hear Bandit whining, I just got home from work and he wants to play so bad and he's being so good. The next shade, Scarab in the palette, is one that I always like to look at it in the pan or in a swatch, but when it comes to actually wanting to use it on my person, on my eyes, I hate it. I always am like, no, absolutely not. There is a similar shade in the Rogue palette to it. It is the shade here. Oh gosh, you can't see. It's this guy here, Stealth Attack. I definitely feel like that is a good shade for Scarab. I also have this shade here called Calypso Blue, which is very, very similar to the shade in the Rogue palette, which is this guy, but less impactful. Let's put her in this guy. Perfect. Next is a pretty easy shade, I feel like, to find similar options to, and that's because it's just a peach shade, and I feel like I have plenty of those. This is definitely going to be way too dark for that shade. And then this, I feel like, which you can't even see, I feel like this shade is going to be maybe perfect for it. That's this guy here. This is MBA Cosmetics Baked Earth. I think this might be it. Yeah, it's like a dead ringer. If we're going to make this look like the actual palette, that's actually the second row shade. So there is that guy right now. Then the next shade in it is BB, which is just a metallic yellow, and pretty no-brainer for me because I don't have that many yellows, but this is like the true yellow that I have, so we're gonna just go with this guy. This is Lemon Drop by Dandelions Cosmetics. This is, oh yeah, for Sure, just a beautiful bright yellow. The shade Mantis, which is just like a pale, I would say like a pea green. I feel like that's a good, pea green is a good descriptor for it. And I don't have anything that really hits the nail on the head in this palette. I don't think this palette, but I am going to pull this shade out just in case. It's definitely more blue toned, but I think single wise, this might be the closest thing I have to it. While I don't have an actual single that's going to be anywhere representative of the shade Mantis, I do think that some shades in the avocado toast would be similar. So I think for a placeholder, it's going to be this shade too that's going to live in my dupe palette. We're moving to the shade Meadow Walk. And this is one, again, that I don't think I'm going to have anything really in my singles collection per se. I don't reach for shades like that all too often. I have them in palettes. The closest thing that I have to that shade is going to be the shade from the Rosewater Quad, which is just too cool toned in my opinion. I don't think I have really anything traditionally in my singles. Again, mostly because it's a shade that I just really don't reach for all that often. Avocado Toast is going to have a similar shade, which is definitely more similar to Meadowhawk. What about you? Ooh, this actually might be perfect. What about like, why don't we put that in there? I feel like that's a fun one. So, and it's like kind of the similar vibes. It's like a pink with like a bit of shiftiness to it. Next shade, Love Bug, is that beautiful, beautiful lavender color. I have two lavenders in my collection. First would come from my ColourPop Sailor Moon palette. This shade here, it's just a little bit too warm toned of a like lilac. The shade that's gonna fit the bill comes from this guy. I would say the shade Wisteria, which is just a cool toned lilac lavender kind of shade. So let's get that guy out. Oh my gosh, I lied. That's not the shade. Okay, I'm a doofus. This is really this shade. That is similar to Jewel B. I need a deeper matte mauve for, what is that? Love Bug. Okay, that's totally, totally doable. That might actually... Yeah, I actually think that fits really well. Now we have Marvel, which looks like just an incredible molten metallic shade. And I have a couple. I have this guy here, which is Luxie Beauty Bitch Fit. Stunning. Totally fits the bill. But I think one of my shades from my Pan Those eyeshadows actually fits it a little bit better. Maybe I lied. I think actually Bitch Fit fits the best. Then we have a super cool toned shade for the shade Death Moth, which is just a super, super cool toned brown. The next shades are all mattes, and they're just kind of more or less boring shades. I don't really have that many cool toned shades like that. Yeah, that's too brown. It's really, really cool toned. It's like as gray as a brown can be. That's kind of what we're looking for. And I don't know if I really have, maybe inside of Retro Glam. I feel like that's pretty doggone close. Then I have the shade Bugaboo, which just looks like a really beautiful, deep burgundy kind of shade. And I really like those kinds of shades. But it doesn't look like I have that many in my collection. Yeah, that's like way too warm toned. And that's my coolest toned one. Yeah, those are going to be way too warm toned. Ooh. I think it's going to be that bottom one. That is PaO2 from the Heather Austin and Adept Cosmetics palette. And then the last shade in that palette is actually the shade Spider, which looks like, in the swatch, it looks like a super dark, it looks like a black, but I think it's just a really, really, really dark purple. What a stupid spot for me to swatch, am I right? I mean, I could do that one that's closest to my knuckle down here. That is Aspiration. I have Blackest Black too, which, I mean, is a black. I've been trying to figure out this last shade for a few minutes now, and I am running into roadblocks. We are just trying to dupe what we can. What shade are you? I'm pretty sure it's one of them. I'm pretty sure it's this one. I think that Baubles is just going to fit the bill. It's not quite a black because the shade in the Tiny Marvels palette, at least on my computer screen, it doesn't look quite black. This is what I have going on for my Tiny Marvels dupe palette. I'll put a little comparison shot next to it. I feel like it's similar. You can see where I was going with it, but there's definitely some differences. And I think that that is just chalked up to, you know, sometimes it's hard to dupe things and be like exactly. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to swatch this out, and I'm going to hope for the best because my fingers are a little dirty from swatching so many things. But yeah, let's just swatch this. Man, I was running out of real estate on this arm and there's only 15 shades. I have a big chunk missing, but that is the Tiny Marvels palette duped out using singles and miscellaneous shades from palettes in my collection. But I like to say hopefully all mostly singles, but really it's not. I have traditionally single shadows. Technically, these are sold as singles. These are shades that are from palettes that I didn't have standalone as singles. And looking at this, the sea of shades that I didn't have singles of, sea of neutrals. Like, I have 1,000 palettes with these in it. These are the 6 shades that I don't have as singles. And looking at this, I feel pretty happy that this is the assortment I have, because a lot of these are more neutral leaning shades or shades that I have in palettes. But now that I've completely jumbled this up and we have no idea what palette I'm talking about, that is it for my duping the Tiny Marvels palette by Sydney Grace. Thank you for watching yet another video in Single Shadow Week. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video. It is a tag video. I don't do those often, but it's a tag video coming up next. And then on Saturday is the video I'm looking the most forward to because I had the most fun filming it and getting it all put together for you guys. But that is it for day, 5 in Single Shadow Week. Thank you again for watching this video, sticking around in sticking around in eyeshadow single week. Again, let me know any other single shadow content themed videos that you would like to see on this channel. I would like to start filming these like single weeks either once every couple months, or just any other themed content. If you want to see a week of palette themed content, a week of loose eyeshadow themed content, a week using my cream eyeshadows, I would be happy to film like random little things for you. Happy to film anything for you guys. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys are staying healthy, sane, and safe. And I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!